This episode of Untold Stories is sponsored by ParaSwap. You'll hear more about them later on in this episode. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. What is up, everyone? What is up, my friends? You are listening and watching Untold Stories together. We're twice a week. We get to dive deep with some of crypto's most influential leaders to find out how this whole crypto thing, where we are today, how it came to be, and where we're going. I am your host, Charlie Shrem. Thank you guys for being here on another beautiful summer day. I'm very excited today because we have someone who's going to talk to us about a lot of fun topics. His name is Phil Geiger. He's the managing director of concierge services at Unchain Capital, and his team teaches clients how to hold private keys, how to be involved in personal retirement in business context. And Unchain Capital is a blockchain financial services company that lends cash to long-term crypto holders. It offers all types of different services, personal, business, concierge services. It's been around since 2017, headquartered in Austin, Texas. Phil, thank you so much for coming on Untold Stories today.
Charlie, thanks so much for having me, man. I'm really thrilled to be here today.
You're a Bitcoiner. Before joining Unchained, anyone can Google and see like the history. You've always been helping curious people get into Bitcoin. Did you find that your first time getting into Bitcoin was a difficult one?
That's right. I'm a Bitcoin man. I found myself kind of in the right place at the right time with the right background. So at university, I studied economics and I got a degree in Keynesian economics. It never really made that much sense to me personally. It was a lot of charts, a lot of predictive stuff that relied on a lot of assumptions that I didn't agree with. So after I graduated, I went into healthcare and was implementing healthcare software. And then I just happened to be at a bar in Madison, Wisconsin in 2014, where local grad students were giving presentations on just a variety of different topics. And I was lucky enough to have one grad student go up and give a presentation on the history of money leading up to Bitcoin. So because of my background and because I had kind of the economics and technology experience, this presentation in my mind really clicked, and it immediately threw me down the rabbit hole, and I've been stuck in the Bitcoin rabbit hole ever since. So yep, been a long time Bitcoiner, and today one of my primary goals is to put private keys into the hands of as many people as possible, because I think everybody is capable of controlling their own wealth by holding on to their Bitcoin private keys.
How do you see the average kind of investor managing his life or her life in the crypto world nowadays? Because it's definitely not your keys, not your crypto, but we're also in a DeFi world where a lot of people want to earn yield. So is there a perfect marriage? Is there a way for us to, I know like Dan Held is on Twitter all the time, and he's constantly finding some of the lowest risk where best yields you can get where you're collateralizing your Bitcoin. But even so, if you're trying to collateralize your Bitcoin in the most decentralized way where you control your keys, the yields are not that great.
Sure. Well, at Unchain Capital, we're a Bitcoin native financial services platform. So
Love it.
we work with people who are treating Bitcoin as their multi-decade or multi-generational wealth. And we build all of our products and services off of the foundation of Bitcoin's smart contract technology, multi-sig. So we build Bitcoin addresses that are controlled by 3 keys instead of typically 1 key. And we can distribute those keys to be able to do a variety of different financial services. So we start with our Vault platform, which just helps clients not lose their Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is one of the most asymmetric bets that we've ever seen in the history of humanity. But you only get to reap the rewards of that asymmetry if you don't lose your Bitcoin for 5 to 10 years. Sounds simple, but it's actually pretty difficult, especially
I keep my private key on my ring.
There you go.
Anyone can take that. Try taking that private key. There's a BIP38 encryption right there, though.
Yeah, so we help, my team in particular helps people go from never holding keys in their life to cold storage multi-sig addresses where you have a majority of the keys. And then yes, from there, we move on to our different financial services. So one of the things that we're extremely excited about announcing is we are launching an Unchained IRA product, a Bitcoin IRA, where from one spot you can roll your retirement, for your legacy 401ks or IRAs into this new Bitcoin IRA, where you have Bitcoin deposited into an address that you have unilateral and permissionless ownership over. Now, when it comes
say that
to
again. Say that again.
So within the next few weeks, we are launching our Unchained IRA product, where you can, get set up with one place, Unchain Capital. You initiate a rollover from your existing kind of legacy 401k or IRA into the Unchained Capital account, where we convert it into Bitcoin. We deposit it into an address that you have 2 out of 3 private keys to, meaning you have unilateral control over it. And the Bitcoin maintains that tax advantage status.
How?
So we just brought on Jeff Vandrew, who for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years was the lead of Keykeeper IRA. We formed a really great partnership with his team and just realized that we could be better together. So we brought him on board, and now we're building out that one-stop shop for tax advantage retirement Bitcoin. But there's no compromises, right? You're at the end of the day holding on to your own keys, so that, if you have a Roth IRA, for example, your Bitcoin is increasing, exponentially over the next 10 years or whatever, and you've already paid taxes on it. So you don't have to pay any capital gains taxes on withdrawing that once you hit that retirement age.
So if I own no Bitcoin now and I wanted to buy some Bitcoin, and I've not reached my IRA contribution limit for the year, it is in my best interest to actually buy the Bitcoin through the tax advantage account up to the certain limit, as opposed to actually just buying the Bitcoin directly. Because in this situation, you get certain tax breaks at the end of the year when you're buying it through the IRA, as opposed to even buying the Bitcoin directly. But if I understand you correctly, you're not just buying a product that securitizes something in the company or whatever. You're actually creating an address, putting the Bitcoin in an address that one-to-one matches what I'm, how much I put into this IRA. That's crazy.
That's exactly right. So you are literally holding the keys to your retirement. Not only are you holding the keys to your Bitcoin, but now you have all the benefits of the, of the legacy kind of retirement legal structure.
Question.
In the Roth. Yeah.
If this was in a trust, can a trustee manage the Bitcoin by buying and selling the IRA? Like, how would that work in retirement accounts, in terms of trusts, in terms of managing that? This is very cool.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have specific answers for you. So at Unchained, we work in many different contexts. So if you do have a trust, you're of course welcome to come to us and set up an account that is legally owned by your trust. But at the end of the day, again, you have the private keys. And then I'm not sure within that legal structure if your trust can have an IRA or a 401k, something like that.
I don't have an IRA.
We do have
I don't have an IRA or 401k. I don't think I've ever had a real job before.
Yeah, we're making Bitcoin IRAs sexy, because you get to actually hold the keys. And what I think is really amazing is the Roth structure, where if you're earning a paycheck.
Explain it to me. Okay.
If you're earning a paycheck, you get your paycheck. If you've saved up in your personal checking account, $6,000 a year through an Unchained Roth IRA, you can convert all of that into Bitcoin, and then you don't pay capital gains taxes on it as it increases in value. So that's kind of amazing. $6,000 per year.
$12,000 if I'm married too. I think it's whatever the number is. There's a married filing jointly number. So you're saying let's just so I can buy up to $6,000 more if I'm married. Well, I am married, so more because I'm married. And you're saying I could do $10,000 a year over 10 years. Let's just say the number is $100,000. If that $100,000 turns into $1 million, when it turns into $1 million, 10 million, 100 million, because it was purchased within that IRA, I'll never need to pay capital gains on that ever.
Assuming the government.
Assuming blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there's a lot of this is not financial advice, educational purposes only. We're not your accountants.
Course, yeah.
But this is crazy. This is awesome.
So assuming these rules are still upheld,
yeah, of course.
At the time that we retire, yes, you wouldn't have to pay any capital gains taxes. And then on top of that, again, you hold the private keys. So, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. You have to literally authenticate a transaction to move the Bitcoin out of the addresses.
Who holds the other two?
So in our vault setup, and again, this works for personal, this retirement context I'm talking about, trusts, business context. Unchain Capital holds one private key. Our clients hold two keys, and 2 out of 3 keys are needed to move Bitcoin out of the address. So once it's set up, it looks like any other Bitcoin address.
Yeah.
But getting the Bitcoin out of the address requires signatures from 2 keys, and our clients hold 2 out of 3. So Unchain Capital, this is kind of the amazing aspect of our platform. And this is what really is different about Bitcoin financial services versus this DeFi idea, is that Unchained Capital doesn't need to exist and our clients can recover their funds unilaterally because they have 2 out of 3 private keys. When you're working in the DeFi context, you're really still trusting a centralized party. If that centralized party disappears, you're out of whatever tokens you're trading. So that's the major difference. And that's what we think is really what protects our clients, is that as a company, Unchained Capital is never a critical single point of failure for our clients. We don't need to exist. Clients can recover their funds because we're Bitcoin native.
This is coming back in a pretty big way. Bitcoin native companies operating in hyper decentralization. It was the only way to run a business for years in the early days, but over the last few years, we kind of lost that. You stop seeing proof of reserves being so big, proof of coin, not your keys, not your crypto. If you look at it on social media rankings, so it's very heartening to see that it's coming back in such a big way, because we see the negativity around what could happen. These $600 million hacks are happening, but also I think because Bitcoin has been around a decade now, there's a belief, and it's a truality, that Bitcoin will be probably around for decades and decades and decades to come. So it's now getting into the heads of the Bitcoiner folk. And I want to talk about this like Bitcoiner voting block or like, so, class. This is like a person is now having to think about, hey, how do we protect ourselves for the future?
Yeah, definitely. Over the last, I would say, year or so, things in Bitcoin have really shifted. A lot of times, historically, Bitcoiners were called out as, hey, weird or crazy, or, oh, it's a Ponzi scheme. And just in the last few months, Bitcoiners held up a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. And now the politicians are all talking and scrambling to learn about Bitcoin. So things have come, and I imagine you've seen it even more than I have. When I first started, I couldn't even imagine, the level that it's achieved so quickly. I remember back in the day on Reddit when CNBC would say anything about Bitcoin, the price would pump, and it would pump 20 or 30 bucks, and everyone would lose their minds. And now, mainstream media just basically has their own Bitcoin channels that they're covering at 24/7, 365, and it's up at the countries are adopting Bitcoin. As El Salvador is about to add it as a second currency alongside the dollar, and U.S. politicians are all discussing it. So it's come an extremely long way in a very short amount of time. It's very cool to see. It's a monetization event. None of us have ever been alive to witness a monetization event. So
why are people buying Bitcoin?
People are buying Bitcoin because they're tired of running on the hamster wheel and having their savings devalued arbitrarily by unelected bureaucrats. Bitcoin is not the ability. In my perspective, Bitcoin didn't give everybody the ability to launch and run their own currency. At the surface level, it kind of looks like that. In my opinion, Bitcoin gives everybody the opportunity to opt out of arbitrarily debased currencies. So opt out of people who print money and steal your savings without asking your permission.
It's almost like such a simple thing, the way we explain it. And it seems like such a, I can't believe that we were ever in a financial system that you could not opt out of pre-2009. What did we do? How did people save money? How did people protect their assets against, like if you would have, I can't imagine a world of stimulus without Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. What would it look like? Where would excess money go? What would people be doing with their stimulus checks?
That's a great question. I think one of the books that I read this year was The Deficit Myth, which is about modern monetary theory. And coming to MMT from a Bitcoiner's perspective, it just seems so dystopian.
Yeah,
They
it
believe
does.
that they believe that we all, work our day jobs and try to earn a living
Yeah.
so that we can pay taxes. Like that's the kind of primary assumption of it. And without Bitcoin, we would all be trapped on this hamster wheel, and that's how it would work. Luckily, MMT totally collapses when there's an exit, and there is an exit, and it's called Bitcoin.
The thing is, though, for the last 10 years, it's just been a small hole. And yeah, it's been leaking, but that hole is getting bigger and big. I would even say that it's become like closable. It's just become this thing now that it used to be that we'd say Bitcoin will provide a hedge. And the fact that there is the option that you can opt out, that will be enough to keep the current financial systems honest and have integrity in a perfect Bitcoin world, right? Bitcoin will remain like a niche thing that will be like hey, we can opt out, like gold. We're always comparing it to digital gold. Now, no one ever assumed or says gold should ever take over. Even the biggest gold bugs in the world will never say that. But it seems to me now, and there's a lot of fear with this, that Bitcoin could actually take such a major slice of that MMT financial system that we have now. Could it collapse?
Well, it's my perspective that as long as Bitcoin can maintain a credible monetary policy of 21 million, and I believe that money converges to one, most of the world for
Yeah.
their daily lives, they just want to deal with one currency. You don't want to always be exchanging different currencies. You just want to be able to do your day job, save in a form of money that can't be debased, and then spend that value on goods and services in the future. So it's my perspective that if Bitcoin can maintain its, monetary policy of 21 million, then it will become the global reserve currency. And that's the assumption that I've kind of
Yeah.
personally lived on. So I've personally converted to a Bitcoin standard. I'm never going back to the dollar. I'm not interested in other cryptocurrencies simply because I have no need for them. I already have the currency that has the optimal monetary policy, which is one that can't be arbitrarily changed by anyone. And from there, now I'm working at a company that is helping me to protect, manage, and grow my Bitcoin wealth over generations. So I've really, personally started to transition over to the Bitcoin standard. Of course, I'll still pay for my bills in dollars because if people are demanding dollars, I'll give them dollars. I don't want to spend my Bitcoin. But when people start demanding me to pay them in Bitcoin, that's when I'll have to start spending my Bitcoin.
The biggest problem with DeFi today, as we know it, is there are simply no aggregators or way to bring all of this information and data together so we can trade off of it. We're going to Uniswap and we're clicking sell, 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 or buy, buy, buy. I mean, imagine staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning just so you can make a trade. The folks at ParaSwap, my newest sponsor, are doing exactly that. They are the fastest and most liquid aggregator on the Ethereum blockchain. They've built a state-of-the-art algorithm that aggregates all the major decentralized exchanges in order to beat the market price. They are willing to offer you on your first swap a 50% gas refund. Check it out in the show notes. I mean, there's no reason not to use ParaSwap. It's the same thing as using any of these other sites, but you're getting a better price, zero slippage, better swap, safer, faster, more secure. What's the downside? There is none that I could think of. And you're getting your first swap 50% gas fees paid for. It solves every problem that I could think of. Make sure you check them out. They're my sponsors. I love them. And I love them even more that they're pushing crypto forward.
I had a crazy realization this morning, actually. And I was just thinking to myself, I said, wow, over the last, 5 years, the asset that I hold that has devalued the most is dollars. Dollars have gone down more than Bitcoin does. And Bitcoin has had
100%.
80% drawdowns. The dollar hasn't. So the point is that you're right. I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, wow, like everything that I bought 10 years ago is over double price now. The cost double than it did. Not in Bitcoin.
The housing market has collapsed,
Everything.
75% measured in Bitcoin over the last 3 years. It's like everyone's complaining about the high price of housing around the world. But it's because they're using the wrong currency to measure that. They're measuring it in dollars, which are, to your point, just losing value at an unprecedented rate. I mean, the Federal Reserve printed trillions of dollars over the last 2 years. Of course, it's going to devalue and everything is going to go up. The thing that really makes me crazy about the legacy system is the price of groceries increasing. Around the world, we're seeing the U.S. a lot of times exports inflation, and here in the U.S.
a lot of times that's the dollar, literally exporting inflation. That's the whole point of the dollar. We just exported our inflation on the world. That's what we did during stimulus. We said, fuck you, world. We're just going to, Americans are going to be great. They're going to get stimulus checks, but the rest of the world ain't.
Well, and this is the thing that kind of keeps me up at night is we have a lot of hubris because we have the global reserve currency for now, but it's my perspective that Bitcoin is the new global reserve currency. And so it's going to catch a lot of Americans off guard. Money, just, one currency doesn't just get to be the global reserve currency forever. We've seen over time many different currencies, gold and silver, and even before that, beads and stuff like that. Even just before the dollar, it was the British pound. That was the global reserve.
From the year 800 to the years from 800 to maybe 1500, the British pound was the world standard. Before that, I read a lot of medieval history, so I could tell you that every 600-700 years, the global standard for money changes. Yep. Why is this time different?
It's not. we've been on a grand experiment since about 1971. So there's a great website out there called WTFhappened in1971.com. I'm sure your listeners have also seen that.
No, I've not seen this. I'm going on it right now.
Oh my God, it's great. It's just a website, WTFhappened in1971.com. It's a website of just, there's charts, and in 1971, something happens and there's a huge disconnect moving forward. So up until today. And, the website not so subtly hints that the fact that things go wonky in 1971 is because that's when the US dollar was finally removed from gold. So it's no longer redeemable for gold. And as a result, prices go crazy and lots of different kind of cultural outcomes occur. So yeah, you can give that website a read and come to your own conclusions. But it's my perspective that the thing that happened in 1971 is that the world moved off of a sound money standard onto floating inflation paper money. And luckily now Bitcoin gives us an alternative. Because it has a fixed supply of 21 million that can't be debased by anyone. We now have a money that the world can use to communicate across borders permissionlessly that does an excellent job of storing and measuring value.
Here is the $1 million question, right? What if in 1971 it never happened? What if here we are in 2020 on the same standard as we were? And what if now, whatever happened in 1971 happened now, but on a Bitcoin standard? Because you can argue that Bitcoin is that same type of inflationary money. It's completely disconnected from the gold standard. So instead of going to paper, what if paper money was just 50 years too early?
Ooh, that's a good hypothetical. I think paper money is the manifestation of gold's failure. Gold is good in a lot of ways, but because it's physical, it makes it extremely hard to scale. You can't just be shipping gold around to make, payments for glasses of, for bottles of water, and then also for, 747s, right? That's a lot of difference in gold. So you really need something that can't be debased and can be, divided up and sent anywhere permissionlessly, which is kind of go back, like the current system is a manifestation of gold's failure as money because of its physicality. And that's why Bitcoin is, a 0 to 1 innovation. It's categorically better across all of the kind of principles of money that you need. It's has zero inflation. There's only going to be 21 million. You can divide it up into sats, 100 million pieces each. So you can buy a cup of coffee and you can buy a 747 with Bitcoin. And then you can send it anywhere you want around the world, and it settles with final settlement in 10 minutes. I mean, that's
what people don't realize.
Innovation.
You can't actually use the same payment system to buy a cup of coffee and you can to buy a 747. If you right now had someone made you an offer to buy a 747, there's a process there's paperwork and legalities and compliance and how you actually pay for that and certain types of letters of credit and collateralization. You can't send a wire transfer to do that. Even a smaller plane. But you can, and then you can't send a wire transfer to buy a cup of coffee either. You're relying on the payment rails of Visa, MasterCard, Nice, Star. You look at your old debit cards, guys. You look at it would say those are the ATM networks, Venmo. They're all on top of these old systems. Whereas what you said is so brilliant. You have one system that allows for a completely, it doesn't matter who you are or where you are or what you are, you're allowed into the system without needing to ask for permission.
That's right. You can buy a gumball and then, at the end of that meeting, you're walking away with a Lamborghini and one gumball, and you've used the same currency and the same form of payment. I think that's pretty cool.
We're continuing to go through this Bitcoin world, and it seems to not just to me, but to a lot of folks that are studying the last 10 years of Bitcoin's price, stock to flow model, and its adoption, it seems like we are on track for that experiment that Satoshi Hal Finney talked about, whereas we need to see like $1 million Bitcoin by, I forget if it was like 2035, and then the year 2150, because in 2035, 99% of all Bitcoin will be, we're on that route. Is that kind of like, when will we actually hit a point where we're at a Bitcoin standard, I guess, where volatility is equaled out and things can be priced in Bitcoin eventually? I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I know it's inevitable, but I have no idea when. What I'll say today is we have, at this point, in the year 2021, Bitcoin is there's a large enough cohort of people that are passionate about it that we can hold up bills in Congress.
That's crazy.
I do believe that in 2024, or I guess in the Senate this time, but we'll hold it up in Congress as well. We'll make sure of that. I think in 2024, the presidential election, both sides are going to be talking about Bitcoin. And then it's my perspective that the dollar probably won't last until 2030. So in Bitcoin terms, it's two halvening cycles, right? 2024 is when every 10 minutes, the block reward gets cut in half from 6.25 to 3.125. And then in 2028, it gets cut in half again. And, based on the trajectory that we've already come and how far we have to go, I think it's going to be a lot faster than we expect. So I really don't think the dollar is going to be super useful in the year 2030 because they just can't help themselves. They can't help but print more money.
And but I'm an American. You're an American too. We love this country. America has staked its existence on the dollar. Other countries like France has done it with baguettes. England has done it with bad food. I'm just joking, guys. I love British food. What's America without the dollar, and how does that? Because listen, I agree with you. I'm asking the questions that the listeners are shaking right now, scared.
It's actually my perspective that central banking itself as a concept is extremely un-American. If you read the Communist Manifesto, right. Number 5 or something on the list of top 10 things to do is centralize control of currency into a third party, because that central authority can essentially just unilaterally absorb the purchasing power of all the people in a country to be able to, allocate the wealth how they deem appropriate. I think that that's profoundly un-American. I actually think that Bitcoin is significantly more American than the current iteration of the US dollar. I think the US dollar, when it was founded, upheld some of those ideals of sovereignty and, and that the US was founded on. But I think that that's been lost over time just through the natural centralization problems that all other currencies have besides Bitcoin. They centralize over time. And once they become centralized, they can become controlled. And once they're controlled, that's no longer, sovereign. So I do think that this concept of central banking is pretty un-American. I think Bitcoin itself, because it relies on individual responsibility to hold your own keys, it doesn't treat anybody in the world differently, regardless of how much Bitcoin you have. You have the same amount of influence over the network itself. So I think it's significantly more fair, and at the same time, it kind of brings us back to our more sovereign roots. So I actually think Bitcoin is significantly more American than the US dollar is today. Again, that changed over time. When the US dollar was first released, of course, it was very American, but what it's become is
been a reoccurring
kind of a
theme.
mess.
Bitcoin
it's very communist. Yeah.
Bitcoin is as American as apple pie.
Hell yeah.
So central banking, if I tweeted that central banking is as is communist or something of that form, I'd get a huge amount of Bitcoiners actually against me, saying that's potentially central banking or whatever. How do we prevent Bitcoin from becoming this partisan issue? You talk about Bitcoin being on the presidential stage. Will it become a partisan issue? Will one side? It seems like it's becoming more of a Republican sovereign, because I'm a big fan of sovereignty, and that's what we talk about on this show. It's all we talk about on the show. And I actually want to remind me to ask you, but my next question about that, one of the tools that you offer. But I mean, how do we prevent it from becoming a partisan thing?
Well, my question for you is the internet partisan?
Now it's not, but was it when it first came out? I'm not up to speed on the history of the internet as much as I should be. And actually, I've had internet folks on the show. I should have asked them that question. I'm going to write that down. But now it's not.
So my perspective
it's a tool.
Is that it's what?
It's a tool.
Exactly. Yeah, my perspective is that Bitcoin, again, what I mentioned earlier is that one of the innovations is that regardless of how much Bitcoin you have, you exert the same amount of influence over the network as anyone else, which is almost zero. That's one of the innovations. Again, nobody can arbitrarily change or debase the currency. So it's my perspective that Bitcoin is maybe the most apolitical technology that exists. Now, what is really funny about it is Bitcoin unites authoritarians on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
So there are Republicans that hate Bitcoin, and there are Democrats that hate Bitcoin. And then the opposite is true as well. There's Republicans that love Bitcoin, Democrats that love Bitcoin. The people who are united in their hatred of Bitcoin are typically the ones who are the most authoritarian. They don't want to give up control or power. So I actually like that. I think it's profoundly apolitical. It unites people. And what many politicians are realizing is that they can tap into this rabid fan base across the aisle. It's bipartisan. It's funny. There's a woman running for Congress in Brad Sherman's district in California.
Good.
And because she isn't Brad Sherman, there's a lot of Bitcoiners out there that are funding her campaign and educating her on Bitcoin. And so, it's cool to see people rallying around representatives that oppose the authoritarians.
There's a lot of people out there who don't want to live in a world where money isn't controlled by a central bank. They like central banks. They see it as protecting their long-term future. What would you say to these people?
Typically, those people are profit significantly off of the Cantelon Effect. And the Cantelon Effect says that if you are closest to the money printer, you are typically at an advantage. You have an advantage over the rest of society. So the people who really, really like central banking are typically in the industries that reap the most rewards from central banking. So finance, healthcare, insurance, all of those mega industries that get access to the money spigot earliest love central banking because, again, they get access to cheaper money without having to actually exert the proof of work that maybe the rest of the economy loves. But if you talk to, the guy who's your barista, they probably don't have any thoughts on central banks. They just want to be able to make coffee and save and, live in a nice apartment and afford groceries and go out to dinner and go on vacation, right? They just want to like live their life. But the central bank is the thing that's making that increasingly more unachievable over time because the value of their wages are decreasing at a faster rate than they're earning.
The crazy thing about Bitcoin is that it doesn't matter how close you are to the money printer, if you're mining or if you're holding, but it also, more importantly, it doesn't matter how early you got in as it relates to like how much power or control you have. We're a leaderless, we're like an anti-hero to a point where like we have this like thing about our community that we will constantly be pulling down anyone who even resembles that hero. Like Elon Musk, take that for example, tries to become the hero of Bitcoin, immediately gets pissed off because we won't allow him to be. And it's just like I love that. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I was talking to some colleagues about that. I mean, Elon Musk blew his one shot at crushing Bitcoin, I think, when he was tweeting about it while it was crashing from 60 to 30K. And, I think that also happened to coincide when the Chinese miners were leaving China and moving to the US. So there was a couple different factors there. But now Bitcoin is immune to Elon Musk. There's nothing that Elon Musk can tweet that is going to cause Bitcoin to crash in value. And the same thing happens with anything that attacks Bitcoin is, they might be able to cause the weak hands to run away, but they don't kill it, right? Whatever doesn't kill Bitcoin makes it stronger because Bitcoin is an anti-fragile system because Bitcoin increases in decentralization over time. As Bitcoin, as the price fluctuates and doesn't die, it introduces Bitcoin to a new cohort of people who are now buying it. And that process makes Bitcoin significantly stronger. And then, to your point, since there's no leader, people who are newer to Bitcoin, they get to reap the reward of the fixed monetary policy the same way that everyone else gets that reward, right? If your $10 doubles in value, that's great, right? Same thing if your $1 million doubles in value, you're still benefiting. The people who took the risk earlier, of course, are going to have a little bit more benefit, but again, Bitcoin was significantly less clear back in the day when you first started getting into it, or when we first started getting into it, than it is today. Today, the risk has been reduced really significantly.
Oh my God, yeah, it's like not even in the same percentage range as it was back then.
Exactly.
Back then, we were building out tools, and it was before the price was even a thing. And we talk about like dollar standard, Bitcoin standard. We talk about money, and at the end of the day, let's agree on something. At the end of the day, money is just a tool to live in a free, amazing life for you and your family, where no one can, I hate to say it, but have your balls in their hands. Because that's actually what I felt like when I was going through the whole judicial system. I was like, it's like constantly, and you hate that feeling. It's like, constantly your life is in control of someone else. So we do this. We wake up every day. I do this podcast. So we preach Bitcoin. You spend your days with a smile on your face because you know that you're helping people live a better, freer, safer life where they're making their own decisions. How can we use Bitcoin to get us to that point? I had this argument with a family member the other day because he has Bitcoin and he's living to paycheck. And I said, use your Bitcoin, take out a loan, and just so you can, as a down payment on a house, you don't need to sell the Bitcoin. But there's like this like not wanting to do that.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a nice introduction to one of our products at Unchain. So as I mentioned earlier, at Unchain Capital, we work with long-term Bitcoin holders to protect, manage, and grow their Bitcoin wealth. And as many of us realize, the longer you're in Bitcoin, the less likely you are to sell Bitcoin. And in fact, you end up accumulating more. And you don't want to sell it because then you miss out on the potential upside. So one of our products is a Bitcoin-backed loan product where you post your Bitcoin as collateral, again, in a multi-signature address where you as a client hold one key, Unchain Capital holds a key, and we introduce a third-party key agent to hold the third key so that there's no single points of failure for your Bitcoin for the duration of the loan. You know exactly where it's sitting, and you can even check your address on your hardware wallet to make sure that you have a key to it. Um, so you post your Bitcoin as collateral into this multi-sig address. We can wire US dollars directly to your bank account, and then you can use those dollars for any legal purposes. So real estate purchases, or
Are these
I've
like
personally used it to remodel a house, stuff like that.
interest only loans, or do you do like principal and interest, like long-term type loans?
So the loans, the way that they work today, we have it's interest only payments. So you upfront, you'll pay an origination fee, and then once a month you'll make your interest only payment, and then at the loan term you have the option to roll it over into another loan. So you would just pay another origination fee and then continue making those interest only payments. Or at the loan term, you can of course liquidate collateral to pay off the principal, or during that time you can be sending in principal payments early. So if you want to pay off or pay down some of your loan, you're welcome to do that as well.
Do you custodialize?
But this can be go ahead.
Do you custodialize physical crypto too, like old school, like Cassatius coins and things like that?
No. So as a company, Unchain Capital never wants to be a single point of failure for our clients. So we hold one key, right? Even in the context of loans, if the government shut down all Bitcoin companies tomorrow, our clients would be able to work with a third-party key agent that works as an escrow in a variety of different industries. They aren't Bitcoin exclusive by design. Our clients would be able to work with the third-party key agent to recover their funds. So again, part of our security posture as a company is that we never want to be a critical single point of failure for our clients, but we do want to partner with our clients to be able to offer financial services. So, again, that Unchained IRA or a loan, or using our OTC desk to purchase and sell Bitcoin directly through us. But yeah, it's all from this foundation of holding your own keys and multi-signature.
It's allowing everyone to continue growing their wealth and maintaining their sovereignty without having to sacrifice centralization. And you're offering a service and products on top of that. And I think that's right, where everyone's going. Phil,
yeah, I think the big difference, just maybe I'll leave us with this if we're wrapping up on time, but the big difference is, when you're working with Unchained Capital, exactly where your Bitcoin is. If you're working with some of our competitors in the crypto lending or DeFi or that type of space, you're sending your Bitcoin into a black box and you're hoping that you'll be able to get it out in the future. But all of those companies are taking client deposits, commingling them, lending them out, or rehypothecating is what it's calling that, or is what that's called. And at Unchained, we don't do that. Your Bitcoin sits in a multi-sig address. You can see it right there on the blockchain. You have a key to it. You're not going to lose the Bitcoin through some sort of hack. It's significantly more secure than the alternatives.
What's the loan to value?
We're very loan to value today is 40%. So if you're going to take a $10,000 loan out, you're putting $25,000 of collateral up. And we actually recently just moved to that LTV because we were running into the scenario where even during Bitcoin bull markets, the price of Bitcoin will crash 30% occasionally. We just saw that from 60 to 30K. We're still in a bull market, but even so, the price crashes pretty significantly. So we wanted to help our clients avoid the scenario where they take out a loan and then immediately get margin called because the price of Bitcoin crashes. So we're very conservative with our LTV. We're conservative with making sure keys are distributed and not rehypothecating anything, because again, one of our primary functions is to help our clients not lose their Bitcoin. So come to us if you're really thinking about Bitcoin for decades or generations.
I am coming to you.
All right.
And I am thinking about Bitcoin for generations every single day. Phil Geiger, thank you so much for coming on Untold Stories today. You're the managing director of concierge services at Unchained Capital, and we covered a lot of topics today. Thank you, and appreciate it. And I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, Charlie, thanks so much for having me, man. Glad to be here.